You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning, it's September the 4th, and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News. I'm live here at paceradio.net and 420pace.ca. As I've mentioned in the past, Cindy is off. She is out west doing some training on her psychedelics, so she won't return for about another 3 weeks, somewhere in there, the end of the month. So until then, it's myself, and occasionally Steve will fill in for Cindy. Steve didn't answer his alarm this morning, so he's out west, so it's 6 o'clock in the morning out there. So I'll be going alone today, but who knows, he may show up tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but Thursday, and he may show up before this broadcast is over, so there's a possibility of that as well. So I'll get started on my first story of the day, and hopefully I can get all the stories in, because the storm is just blown in here, and I'm watching the trees go sideways, so we'll see what happens. Okay, first story, as I mentioned, here we go. Headline comes to us from Marijuana Moment, and it is 2 in 3 American voters support legalizing marijuana nationwide. Poll shows as Trump weighs rescheduling. There is a difference, people, between rescheduling and descheduling. About 2 in 3 American voters say legalizing cannabis nationwide would be a good idea, according to a new poll. Now, as advocates and stakeholders await a decision from President Donald Trump on a more robust rescheduling proposal, the survey from the Emerson College found that 65% of registered voters are in favor of going further by ending prohibition altogether. Just 35% said legalization is a bad idea. Now, the 65% who support figure marks a 5 percentage point increase compared to the last time the Emerson College inquired about the issue last October. So that's that. It's gone up 5% in that short amount of time. So that's good. Now, Democrats were the most likely to back legalization at 80%. That was followed by independents at 66% and Republicans at 49%. Now, the majority support for reform extended across all age demographics except those 70 and older. They say that they are narrowly divided on legalization, with 52% against and 48% in favor. So a little bit on the downside there. Support is highest among voters under 30. That's at 71%. And in their 40s, which is at 74%. According to Spencer Kimball, executive director of the Emerson College polling. Now, what else does it say? It says, if Trump was to make a decision about legalizing, boy, that would really turn things around on his favorability, which has been pretty stagnant for the last few months, according to Kimball. Now, the survey involved interviews with one is the latest in a series of polls investigating public opinion on cannabis. And they say, for example, recently released polling data from the Pew Research found that an overwhelming majority of Americans, nearly 9 in 10, support legalizing cannabis in some form. The numbers are there. The numbers are there. The percentage, the people have spoken. They want cannabis to be legalized. Not just rescheduled, legalized. There is a difference. If you don't know, you're not sure, there's all kinds of information available online for you to take a look at, because I haven't got all the time right now to explain it all, but I would look into that if you are concerned about the two of them. All right, on to my next story. This one comes to me from the Medical Express. Headline says, Beyond the Trip, How Compounds Derived from Psychedelics Could Help Treat Inflammatory Conditions. Now, psychedelic drugs, well known for their powerful effects on perception and emotion, may hold the key to treating a wide range of inflammatory diseases, where new therapies are urgently needed, from neurodegenerative conditions to gut and respiratory disorders. Birmingham researchers have highlighted the emerging therapeutic potential of a new class of compounds derived from psychedelics, which they coined PIPI, so PIPI drugs, or they could pronounce it PIPI. The psychedelic drug informed, but psychedelics experience and inactive drugs. That's what it all stands for. It could mean that it is open the door to safe, targeted therapies for widespread use in clinical settings. Now, in a review published in the British Journal of Pharmacology, scientists led by Professor Nicholas Barnes, principal founder and CEO of the University of Birmingham, examined emerging evidence on how psychedelics may do far more than alter consciousness by influencing immune system function, making psychedelics-derived medicines promising candidates for diseases and conditions featuring inflammation. Hey, right here. Now, psychedelics alone influence neuroinflammation, which is a critical factor in chronic and debilitating brain diseases such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, schizophrenia, depression, and the consequences of neurotrauma. Now, a key drug market of psychedelics is the serotonin receptors in the brain. Yet, these receptors are also found in other tissues, including the immune cells, and significantly, the anti-inflammatory actions of psychedelics may be biologically distinct from the mechanisms responsible for their hallucinogenic effects. This means it may be possible to develop next-generation treatments that harness the therapeutic power of psychedelics without introducing hallucinations or changes in perception, and these molecules are now beginning to emerge. Now, Professor Barnes, who has studied the 5-HT receptor system for over 40 years, and is the chair of the IUPHAR 5-HT receptor nomenclatural committee, said this fight highlights a frontier in psychedelic research that could transform how we treat some of the most challenging and persistent diseases of our time. He goes on to say it may mark a major shift in how we address chronic diseases where inflammation delivers pathology. As PIPI drugs move into clinical investigations, they say that they hope that their therapeutic potential is translated to deliver benefits to patients. So hopefully, as more studies are done and more reports come out, that psychedelics will become more mainstream in order to help patients and make things better for patients, improve their quality of life. It's nice to be able to have a cure for everything, but until we can do that, then improving someone's quality of life, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. So, all right, on to my next story, and this one comes to me from the International Cannabis Business. There we go. Bring it right there. Conference. There we go. Now, cannabis proposal signature submitted to Ecuador National Assembly. Do we have another country that is about to legalize? Maybe. And here we go. It says Ecuador has sorted past when it comes to cannabis policy. Like many of its continental peers, Ecuador has experienced a significant amount of violent cartel activity over the years. Geographically positioned between Peru and Colombia, two of the largest cocaine-producing countries, Ecuador's cannabis policies have historically been driven by a war on drugs mentality among its leaders. Now, for a long time, Ecuador's cannabis policies did not differentiate between personal cannabis activity and large-scale trafficking activity. Both sets of cannabis activity resulted in harsh penalties for people caught by authorities. In 2013, Ecuador's National Assembly passed a new criminal code, which went into effect in 2014. The new criminal code effectively decriminalized the personal possession of up to 10 grams of cannabis. Unfortunately, the public policy change would later be repealed. Now, cannabis advocates in Ecuador, affiliated with Network of Cannabis Organization and Individuals of Ecuador, launched an initiative in 2023 to gather the necessary number of signatures to force consideration of a cannabis regulation measure. Now, RedCan recently submitted the first batch of signatures to Ecuador's National Assembly. It says here, the Network of Cannabis Organizations and Individuals of Ecuador presented some 20,000 signatures to the National Assembly as part of the popular normative initiative process that seeks to regulate the use of cannabis in the country. It goes on to say that we're going to use the signature collection as a two-pronged strategy to follow the process established by the CNE and to begin stimulating the debate within the National Assembly. We're also submitting a letter to the President of the Legislative Assembly and the Health, Economic Development, and Justice Committees, stated Gabriel Buitron, president of or spokesperson for RedCan. Now, Ecuador's initiative process requires that the equivalent total of valid signatures amount to 0.25% of the total voter registration in the country, which is about 35,000 signatures. Now, RedCan's goal is to gather the remaining 15,000 signatures by October. And if they succeed, Ecuador's parliament will have 180 days to process the proposal. Now, the initiative aims to place cannabis under government control, to allow adults to obtain a medical prescription, to tax the prescriptions, and to invest the generated revenue to education and prevention. The proposal also seeks to create a National Institute for Cannabis Regulation. Well, let's hope there's some legalization in there, because I just hate it when you hear that patients are being taxed for their medication, because patients shouldn't be taxed for their medication. Hey, Cindy, how you doing? Thanks for the thumbs up. I don't know if you caught the beginning of the show, but I think maybe Steve slept in today. So, alrighty. Oh, I got what? 1, 2, 3, 4. I got one more story to bring up before I go to break, and let's see what it is. Oh, we're going back on the psychedelic end of things. There we go. This story today comes to me from greenstate.com. Headline there says, why shrooms help some people and not others? You know, cannabis is the same thing, different. Not in my mind, anyways. They said your genes play a role in how you respond to magic mushrooms. Well, studies have shown that psilocybin or magic mushrooms can help treat patients with generalized anxiety disorder. Current data indicates that it does not have a high efficiency rate. In a recent phase 2 clinical trial, only 44% of participants responded to the psilocybin treatment. However, a study which was published in the International Journal of Psychopharmacology found a new way to identify which individuals with GAD, which is a generalized anxiety disorder, are likely to respond to psilocybin treatment. It says that this study was the first study to utilize multi-omic approach to look at psychedelic treatment for mental illness. Now, the researchers analyzed samples of blood taken from 11 participants who responded to psilocybin and 13 participants who did not respond to the treatment. They identified 5 genes that were differentially expressed in responders, but not in non-responders. Through a cluster analysis, they were also able to identify the expression levels of 4 genes. Now, these genes separated 45% of participants who responded to psilocybin from all other participants, suggesting that these genes may play a role in one's reaction to psilocybin. The implications of these results have the potential to significantly help doctors prescribe the most effective treatments possible. By being able to differentiate between patients who do react well to psilocybin versus those who do not, doctors will be able to direct those who might not respond well to alternative therapies. Being able to isolate the patients that do not have this genetic predisposition means that those patients can receive treatment that is likely to be more effective faster, bypassing the potential adverse side effects from psilocybin. Now, while the implications are vast, further study is needed to validate these genes as treatment response biomarkers and predictors of treatment response. So there you go. Who knows? Maybe they'll be able to pre-test you to see if you're going to respond favorably to the treatment. And as I said, that may reduce people who may not respond well. And instead of dealing with the nasty side effects or something, or maybe being disappointed, they'll know that ahead of time and just move on to something else. So, alrighty, it is halfway through the show. I got 4 stories done, and I got 4 more to go. But time for me to go to break, and right after that, I got those stories for you. You're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News. I'm live here at paceradio.net and 420pace.ca.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, open Monday to Friday from 10 till 7 p.m. or by chance. Check out our flags, our t-shirts, plus our hats, and look of that supply of rolling papers, plus much more. We've got bongs and your favorite herbal vaporizers. Look at all the incense we have, as well as for those who collect knives, check out these knives in our collection. And while you're here, stop in to see Shay at the piercing room, where you can get poked by Shay. Daily deals, check them out. Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford, Ontario. Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. Rerolled Saturdays. Check it out. Nothing but non-stop cannabis and psychedelic programming. Find it at 420pace.ca.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
All right, I'm back. We're live. Already got to bring up 4 more news stories, and we're going to be talking, I'm going to say, psychedelics for 3 of 4 stories that we're going to be touching on. And so I'll just get right at her. Here we go. First story. This comes to me from Entrepreneur. Headline says, U.S. military adds psilocin to drug testing policy. Ooh. Yep, U.S. military personnel will start being tested for psilocin, a chemical found in psychedelic mushrooms, on October 1st, so within the next month, according to Marijuana Moment, they say here. The changes stems from a memo last month containing updates to the Pentagon's drug policy, which cited the risks of impairment and subsequent deterioration of security, military fitness, readiness, good order, and discipline as justification for adding psilocin to the drug panels. So is alcohol banned there? Just making sure, not 100% sure, but I hope it is. Now they say here, the Department of Defense maintains a zero tolerance policy prohibiting drug use, and we remain committed to continually expanding drug testing capabilities and enhancing our education and prevention efforts by providing effective information on drug misuse, including the use of psilocin, according to a statement from the DoD. Now, the change comes as veterans are increasingly looking to psychedelics like psilocybin, another psychedelic found in magic mushrooms, and MDMA as a potential sources of relief from treatment-resistant conditions like depression and post-traumatic stress injury, as we like to call it here. Meanwhile, psychedelic mushrooms remain a Schedule 1 substance, which is supposed to be reserved for drugs with no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. That hasn't stopped State Oregon and Colorado, however, from legalizing and regulating medicinal access to psilocybin at the state level. Now, in 2024, the Army started testing service members for Delta 8 THC. So there you go. They're going to be start testing military personnel for psilocin to see if anybody is taking any mushrooms. And who knows, maybe that's a patient who hasn't spoken up yet. And I hate to see a patient get into trouble for something that they find is benefiting them. So, all right, on to my next story. And this one comes to me for StratCan. Headline there says, the Dutch cannabis coffee shop trial moves to the next phase with local hash supply. That's right. September 1st marks the first day coffee shops participating in the Netherlands cannabis supply pilot project will only be able to sell hashish from regulated sources. That's right. Yeah. Now, the Dutch government announced its plans for a closed-loop supply chain project in 2022, which includes exploring the possibility of closed cannabis chain for cannabis coffee shops in several cities across the country. Now, beginning in April of 2025, participating coffee shops in 10 cities in the Netherlands were only able to sell cannabis from authorized growers, but were allowed to continue to source and sell hashish from the illicit market for a limited time. Now, giving regulated suppliers more time to get established. There are currently 7 growers harvesting and supplying legal cannabis to those participating coffee shops. Now, as of September the 1st, the 75 participating coffee shops are also required to source the hash from the 5 regulated suppliers they've been sourcing cannabis flower from. Now, the selection of Dutch-made hash has expanded considerably, according to the NRC, which is a daily paper in the Netherlands. It says, regular customers, with few exceptions, have switched fairly easily. One participating coffee shop owner in Zaanstad told the NRC in April, who said at the time that he planned to remove 5 black market source varieties from the menu as of September the 1st. However, the owner, along with others, told the NRC that it would be difficult to replace all hash products that their customers like with Dutch ones, especially well-known products like Moroccan hash. Now, according to the owner of Zanstat, they say, I think the conclusion of the experiment is that we can't replace Moroccan hash with Dutch products alone. Look at the board there. All the products they got for sale. Now, first announced in 2022, the goal of the Dutch closed-loop experiment is to explore the possibility of a quality control cannabis production and distribution system in the country as an alternative to the long-standing tolerance policy that has not legal but tolerated coffee shops. Now, their points of sales and unregulated illicit growers who supply them. However, when the Dutch government fell in June of this year, the cannabis pilot project was included in a list of controversial topics. NRC's reporting notes that although both the Christian Union and the Christian Democratic Appeal parties initially voted in favor of the cannabis experiment, both parties now want to end it, according to their election manifestos. Let's just hope it's not going to end it like I don't know. See what happens here. Now, the CDA writes, we're pulling the plug on the weed experiment. We're introducing a weed tax until we're done with the weed experiment. We're using part of the proceeds to discourage drug use by providing more information in schools about the dangers of drug addiction. Now, the NRC reports that the Christian Union calls that cannabis trial disastrous and wants to end it immediately. So when they're calling it disastrous, it sounds like ending it completely outright. And I guess that puts, some people would be happy with that because I'm sure there's people who preferred the old system. And then there would be some people, especially business owners, that maybe put some money into the new system. Obviously, maybe out. So, all right. On to my next story. These two next stories, we'll find out. I don't know. We'll find out. Here we go. Headline. This one comes to me from Mugglehead Magazine. Headline on there says American priest ousted by church for psilocybin advocacy. Now, it says that Episcopal priest who founded a Christian psychedelic organization after a magic mushroom experience has been kicked to the curb by his religious superiors over the drug's legal status in the U.S. Reverend Hunt Priest participated in a psilocybin study held by Johns Hopkins and New York University in 2016 and was so moved by his trip that he wanted to spread awareness about it. This immense enthusiasm for the natural psychedelics effects inspired him to leave his job at the parish and create an advocacy group, Legare, in 2021. It sounds similar to a cannabis patient. When a cannabis patient finds out and feels and experiences the benefits of cannabis, they can't be quiet. And this sounds like maybe this is what's happening to this fella. Now, on August the 5th, Priest was officially expelled by the church for what the religious organization perceived as using his pastoral status to promote usage of psychedelic drugs. He had been a member for 2 decades. Now, Bishop Frank Lagu of the Diocese of Georgia described it as conduct unbecoming a member of the clergy. Now, according to a report from the Religious News Service, also a conduct involving dishonesty, fraud, deceit, or misrepresentation, as specified in the religious publications article. Concerns also emerged about Legare hosting a psychedelic retreat in the Netherlands, with what concerned figures viewed as an inadequate training. They perceived priests to have a lack of concern for risks associated with psilocybin mushrooms, deeming him irresponsible. Goes on to say, the long and short of it is that I felt there was a really reckless disregard for public safety and for considering the risks of psychedelic uses, says Reverend Joe Welker. Now, Welker is a former intern from Laguerre who left over his feelings about the organization's lack of concern regarding the dangers of bad trips and potential spiritual damage. Now, priest expulsion follows a 13-month investigation inspired by a formal complaint filed by now Presbyterian Pastor Welker. He has also been highly critical of the 2016 study priests participated in. Now, despite the criticism and conflict, Laguerre adamantly believes that psilocybin can be highly beneficial for treating people with mental illness and addictions. The organization says promising research into treating substance use disorders and end-of-life anxiety, as well as treatment-resistant depression and PTSD, is refueling interest in psychoactive plants and fungi and their synthetic analogs. Now, the removal of Laguerre's founder from the priesthood highlights tensions brought about by the modern-day psychedelic renaissance and traditional religious institutions. Many other offbeat religious organizations in the United States have been integrating psychoactive substances in their worship practices and attracting condemnation because of it. Yes, I remember hearing about this study about the priests going to those places, and I'm not surprised that one of them wanted to speak up. Now, talking about cannabis and psychedelics, not cannabis psychedelics, but religion and psychedelics. This next story just continues right along with this. This comes to me from the marijuana moment, and with it says, the headline, come on, there it is. Why are more religious groups using psychedelics as spiritual sacraments? I don't know. Let's find out. Maybe they find it beneficial. They say Texas passed a landmark law in June 2024, supported by former Governor Rick Perry, that allocates $50 million to support research on ibogaine, one of the most powerful psychedelics, for treating opioid addiction and treatment-resistant PTSD. Says Arizona passed a similar law in May, funding research on ibogaine's effectiveness for treating veterans and those with traumatic brain injuries. These laws come on the heels of states such as Oregon, Colorado, Kentucky, and Georgia legalizing ketamine, a psychedelic that has been used in emergency rooms as an anesthesia for therapeutic purposes in the past 2 years. On a side note, I know I've talked to a vet. They say they use it on the animals. Now, psychedelics, broadly defined, are a class of psychoactive substances that alter perception, cognition, and mood through their interactions with neurotransmitters such as serotonin. Now, as a medical enthusiast, anthropologist, the author says that he has spent the past 25 years studying the rise of alternative approaches to mental health treatments, and has specifically focused on the past 4 years on the impact of psychedelics on consciousness and spirituality. The push to legalize psychedelics in America is not new. What distinguishes the latest round of advocacy, however, is its backing by a holy trinity of supporters, some scientists, politicians, and clergy. Several religious groups have historically used psychedelics for sacred healing. Some clergy who have been exposed to these medicines in the past few years are advocating their use for gaining mystical insights. There are several kinds of psychedelics. Classical psychedelics include compounds such as LSD or psilocybin and mescaline, which is derived from peyote. Another psychedelic is DMT, found in there's ayahuasca and other plants. About the classic category and other psychedelic compounds, sometimes group of psychedelics include substances such as MDMA, a class of psychoactive drugs that induce feelings of love, empathy, and correctness with others. Now, a 2021 study on MDMA showed a 67% reduction of PTSD symptoms after 3 sessions of MDMA therapy. While the study had a limited sample size, which was 104, it marked a turning point in how the psychologists understood MDMA as a potential healing modality. Now, dissociative agents such as ketamine, which can produce altered states of consciousness, are also included as a category of their own. Traditionally used as medical anesthetic, ketamine has more recently gained attention for mental health treatment, particularly for its antidepressant effects. Derived from the iboga plant, native to West Africa, ibogaine introduces powerful visions and dreams. It has a long history of being used for traditional healers in villages throughout Africa to treat mental health issues such as anxiety and depression. A 2022 National Institute of Health review of 24 studies showed that ibogaine significantly reduced depression, PTSD, and opioid addiction in at least 2/3 of the 743 participants. This mirrors the scientific evidence provided in the 2024 Stanford Brain Study, which showed an 88% decrease in PTSD symptoms following use of ibogaine in 30 military veterans. Now, several mental health practitioners and scientists have been staunch advocates for psychedelic therapy based on this research. What is somewhat new, however, is the addition of a handful of high-profile clergy to the list of supporters. A recent study published by the New York University and Johns Hopkins University highlights a number of religious practitioners ranging from the Episcopal ministers to Catholic priests, rabbis, and Zen monks. 24 of the 29 participants made the case that psychedelics can lead to a profound spiritual experiences. Now, a 2025 article in the New Yorker noted that several of the clergy who participated in the New York University Johns Hopkins study found or went on to become vocal advocates. And we just read about one who got fired. While the sample size was small and heavily composed of Christian religious leaders, the findings are noteworthy. Some 96% of study participants described the use of psychedelics as one of the top 5 most spiritually significant experiences of their lives. An NIH study conducted in 2019 focused on spiritual encounters experienced with DMT. The study revealed that 75% of the 42 participants reported an intense mystical encounter and believed that it brought them closer to the divine. They narrated the experience as one in which they saw flashes of white light, heard angelic sounds, felt tingling in their bodies, and had an overall sensation of God's love. Now, leaders and members of the churches that use psychedelics as sacraments describe the role of these substances as facilitating a deeper connection with the divine. The psychedelics are offered at the beginning of weekly services by the religious leader, and then the congregants move into singing, chanting, or praying. Several leaders of such churches whom I have interviewed, the author has interviewed, have described the role of psychedelics as facilitating a deeper focus on God for longer periods of time. The Native American Church, which is considered the largest indigenous church in America and is located throughout the Southwest, has been legally using peyote for services since the 1990s. Now, 1994 American Indian and Religious Freedom Act allows Native American churches to use and transport peyote, even though it is a Schedule I substance, meaning that its use is technically illegal outside of the special circumstances as provided by exceptions to the law. Congress in the church note that they have been using natural because they can remember, even before it was officially legal. More recently, there have been a series of churches opening up across the U.S. that use ayahuasca as their sacrament In May of 2025, the Gaia Church in Spokane, Washington, became one of the first churches in America to receive the DEA administration's exemption for the use of ayahuasca in religious ceremonies. The DEA exception makes the use of substances completely legal for all members of the church as long as it's taken as a sacrament and provided by the spiritual leaders. One Amen, who runs an ayahuasca-focused church in Hawaii, who the author interviewed last year, described the psychedelics as a chairlift to God because of the number of people in his congregation who report seeing, feeling, glimpsing, or sensing God after drinking ayahuasca. There is no doubt that psychedelics can induce profound spiritual experiences. One priest who has become a psilocybin advocate says, if this is what can bring people back together and back to the church, then harmonizing the ways of the ancient with plants, medicines, modern technologies, and religion might be the way to heal society's ills. Although most classic psychedelics are considered safe and non-addictive, they also carry some risks. Psychedelic use can induce acute anxiety, cause panic attacks, and lead to paranoia. In rare cases, they say they could lead to psychotic breakdowns and suicidal thoughts, particularly among individuals with personal and family history of schizophrenia, just like a lot on the cannabis end. Now, psychedelics can also temporarily impair judgment and coordination. This is what they suggest going through with therapists and stuff like that. So they say they may risk accidents. Yeah, if you're doing a bunch of LSD or whatever, sure, I can see all that. They say risk can also amplify by uncertain doses, unaltered substances, in the absence of certified and trained facilitators. And it's not like the old days where you just go to the bar and you can pick up a few tabs. Now, most mental health practitioners and advocates of these medicines suggest that they be taken under the care of medical and spiritual professionals who have trained in administering and facilitating preparation and aftercare for psychedelic use. And I've heard Cindy say the same thing. And like I said, she's off doing more training to do all this stuff. Now, shamans and indigenous practitioners have long regarded these substances as sacred medicines and used them for healing. Modern day science is confirming some of their benefits in supporting future treatments of trauma and addiction. Moreover, the mystical experience of these medicines offer as pathways to connect people to the divine are profound. So there you go. Religious and psychedelics. Who would have ever thought? I know when I was younger, we would never have thought of that. I know that for sure. All right, got a message here about a podcast on psychedelics and stuff like that. All righty. There we go. I'll just bring it up. I know of Chris. Okay, there we go. I don't know the podcast, though. All righty. Well, I see you got another thumbs up. Thanks, Paul, for stopping by and checking out the program as well. We talked a lot about psychedelics, but quite often it can be a mix. We could have 4 psychedelics, 4 cannabis stories. Who knows? We just picked some stories that we believe that our viewers would like, and to inform them, as it says, education is in our podcast names. Alrighty. Other than that, I'm done for the day. Looks like the wind has calmed down out there, but the sky is looking dark, and they are calling for heavy rainstorms in my area. So we've been screaming for it for 8 weeks, so it's finally here. So we'll take it as it comes. Other than that, folks, I am done. I'd just like to say thanks to our buddies at the Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, At-Eze.ca, at Limestone City Hydroponics.ca. And in closing, as always, I'd like to say thanks to you. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching the program. Whether you're watching here on social media, our website, or catching the podcast afterwards as an audio podcast on Spreaker, thanks for tuning in. And as I always say, don't forget to educate, medicate, and Do not incarcerate.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network, here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education, here at paceradio.net.